name is Brad Muniz, and I'd like to welcome you to Sobel Insights. Sobel Insights is a weekly series that provides some brief information on various topics. Our goal is to keep the session to 15 minutes. At this time, we do not offer CPE. If you have any ideas for topics or presenters, please feel free to reach out to me. Our topic today is pooled employer plans, and the speaker is Michael Salerno, who's with National Professional Planning Group. So we do a lot of employee benefit plan audits, Michael, and I know that there's a lot of different plans out there, different types of plans, who can be in them, who can't be in them. And the one thing that I've heard a lot of is pooled employer plans. And I like to say that I know a lot about different employee plans because I do QC on it, but can you give us some background on, a lot of people say PEP or pooled employer plan. What are they?
Sure. Well, thank you again for inviting me here tonight. So big differential between a pooled employer plan, a multiple employer plan, and a single employer plan, okay, is how the participants are handled within that PEP, as we call it. So let's kind of start at the beginning. With a single employer plan, it's what the vast majority of all of our clients and 401k plans are today. So you'll have a single employer sponsor a plan. They'll select their benefit specifications, their eligibility, their waiting period, different types of design. And then from there, they'll go and select an investment menu. They'll select a record keeper, right? And then they'll begin to manage that. And they have the ability to outsource a lot of those functions. Usually you see two different buckets. One is an investment fiduciary bucket, where there's many roles and responsibilities and associated liabilities there. And then you also have the administrative fiduciary, bucket, which that comes with the compliance work, maintaining notices and delivery of information to your participants, and making sure that contributions get there timely, which is really the number one concern that most plans have to deal with. So that's a single employer plan. Next, we have the multiple employer plan. And you may be familiar with that, as it's been around for quite a long time, and it's just a grouping of different companies that do not have common ownership and do not have an affiliate service group relationship, but they do have a nexus. So they have some type of nexus. That nexus may be membership to an association, franchises, CPA association, etc. So because they have that nexus, they can join together, and in so doing, what are the benefits, right? So the benefits may be cost savings. The benefits may be having additional professional oversight that they may not have been able to afford or put together for a smaller single employer plan, etc. So there's the multiple employer plan platform. And then lastly, your question is, what's a pooled employer plan? Well, simply said, it's a multiple employer plan without the requirement of a nexus. So any entity can join a pooled employer plan that has been set up by a PPP, which takes on the role and responsibilities of sponsoring the plan and managing and overseeing the plan. But the key differential, okay, is that the nexus does not have to be there. So Company A, separately owned, separately run, in an entirely different industry than Company B, can both be in the same 401k plan. So that's really the basis of the pooled employer plan.
And I imagine one of the benefits, anytime you look at Wall Street and, you think about how the trading of stocks, we don't have to go through that history unless you really want to. But you always hear institutional funds. And we'll talk about size companies in a little bit later on, but you have a company that says, I'd like to be part of a plan, but how do I become part of these institutional funds? I imagine becoming part of the pooled employer plans puts you into potentially a part of an institutional category of being able to invest in different instruments. And I imagine there's some other benefits that come along with it too.
Well, you're correct, Brad. So, when you speak about institutional funds, as you know, certain funds have certain minimums, and
right.
When you can pool together, then that gives you more buying power.
Right.
So, right, from a buying power standpoint, with the pooled employer plan, in most cases, you'll have stronger buying power than what you would have in a single employer plan, right? So that's one of the benefits. But the benefits don't stop there. The benefits, that gives you access to institutional money managers and institutional pricing. So it also allows you to negotiate with the funds and make certain commitments that if they receive a $500 million, $1 billion, then they would be willing to reduce their overall management fees. And then obviously all the participants get to enjoy that savings. That's usually done under what they call a CIT structure. So when you negotiate with the different investment companies, you have this additional lever that you may be able to use under the PEP model. Another nice benefit of the PEP is when you're attracting additional companies, those companies that are over 120 employees, as you know, need an audit.
Right.
Okay. So in a single employer platform system, okay, every plan has to be audited. Okay, and that takes a lot of time, money, and resources from that single employer. With the pooled employer plan, okay, the pooled plan is being audited. So you may have 10, 50, 100, 1,000 employers, adopting employers in a PEP. Well, that PEP being audited is going to be sampled amongst all of them. So number one, the time and energies that each adopting employer may have to put into an audit for a PEP is going to most likely be much less burdensome than if it was for a single employer plan. And then in addition, now you're sharing the cost of that pooled employer plan audit, that PEP audit, okay, amongst all the adopting employers, rather than having to bear 100% of that, on their own. So, from a cost standpoint, we definitely see economies of scale as being one of the driving factors for PEPs. But also what we've seen and we've learned is it's not just about economies of scale. It's about outsourcing. It's about expertise. We've seen that private equity groups, for instance, or companies that have a lot of control relationships with partnerships, they really like the PEP model because there's a built-in administrative fiduciary who takes on that role and that liability of maintaining compliance. So rather than they having to always do extra research or hiring a professional one-off to handle these mergers, acquisitions, these transactions that are a part of their business model, this PEP solution creates a streamlined approach that, regardless of if they are involved with a control group entity or just a managerial entity, which a lot of times you'll see in the hotel industry, that PEP really works well with it.
That's interesting. But one thing I want all the viewers to understand is just because now you're part of this bigger pool doesn't mean you're going to get in on IPOs any earlier. Okay. No. Right. So it's not going to get you on the next Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. But this also doesn't release them from their own fiduciary responsibilities. Every company and plan, you have fiduciary responsibilities to your participants / employees, however you want to phrase them. But to your comment, you do have more of an expertise than if you're trying to go it alone. And I like that concept. I'm not going to let Liz Harper hear about the spreading of the fees amongst all different companies because she'll ask us to edit that out immediately. So, so that's interesting that you said, and you brought up the 120, and that's in the first year. And after that, if you're over 100, the second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever years, you have to continue to have the audit. Is there an average size client that fits this PEP model that you feel?
So, that's a really interesting question because I get it quite frequently. There have been PEPs built that are really what we call for the micro market, the startups, the smaller employers. And let's define small employers as someone not needing an audit. Okay. And there are reasons to do that, especially when you're driven by economies of scale and cost savings. But we've seen a really strong demand for the larger plans, those that require an audit, because their needs are different, but their costs are different too, right? Because now they have the ability to spread that cost of an audit over a multiple number of adopting employers. Right. But I've also seen, in a smaller entity, you usually have one or two people wear a ton of hats. right? In the larger entity, there's more and more specialization. And with that specialization comes a lot of outsourcing of professionals. And in that need, okay, the PEP reduces a lot of fees and streamlines a lot of their activities. So although a lot of times you'll hear people talk about target markets in the form of size, number of participants, I don't really think it's as much of a number of participants that drives the need for the PEP versus the unique needs of each potential adopter that drives their desire to be involved with this pooled employer plan.
It's great. So anybody that's thinking about this, restructuring their plans or getting into a plan, they should be reaching out to you to get more information as to this, because you want to make a prudent decision as to what's going to benefit the participants and what's going to benefit the company without burdening the company. So I think it's great. The one thing that's always concerned me about these type of plans is, we've handled defined benefit plans, the multi-employer plans, and I know versus multiple employer, but the multi-employer plans, where it's if company A, you have company A, B, and C, and company A goes bankrupt and never funded their contributions, company B and C will be on the hook to satisfy their responsibility to keep the participants whole in some way. Is that a criteria or a facet of these type of plans still?
So one of the things that the Department of Labor really got right here is they removed what you're describing is the bad apple rule, okay, for PEPs. So if one of the adopting employers, company A, does something that causes their particular plan to have deficiencies, well, that's not going to negatively impact company B that's also in the PEP. And that's really important, right? Because no one wants to be liable or responsible for actions that they can't control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's excellent, because you'd hate to refer a client into a particular vehicle and then 5-10 years down the road they find out that they've got to pay for somebody that hasn't been contributing properly when they've been doing everything properly themselves. So that's great that they got rid of that, and I feel terrible for the participants of the bad apple.
Yeah. Right. And even those participants, when they become they get put in a position where their company has acted in a certain manner, and now being a part of the PEP really puts them in a better position, because now there's a third party administrative fiduciary who has a responsibility to make sure that that plan is righted, that whatever deficiency was there gets cured.
Right.
Where when you're in a single employer platform, okay, there's more flexibility. Now, some people may say, well, you know what? I'm a small employer. I like that flexibility. And that's a good reason why a PEP is not the right solution for everyone. But right now, I really think it's a solution that everyone should consider.
I will say the last area that you want flexibility with is Department of Labor. Don't try and go with flexibility because you think that you're smarter than the average bear here, Yogi. Department of Labor is brutal, and they're out to protect the employees, which they should. And don't try and play games with this. People that don't contribute, pay their sales tax or payroll tax timely. I don't advocate that either. Yeah. But when it comes down to the employees and the employees not getting their money, they go after the sponsors, and they say, not only do you have to make up the money, you have to make up lost earnings too. So yeah, don't play games with this. So those are my questions I had for you. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to contribute to it.
No, I think actually you covered, on a broad base, what these PEPs are all about. And, the reality of it is you can't make decisions based upon, a 5 or 10 minute conversation. This is a very detailed, discussion, and needs to really be looked at in a more greater due diligence, so that each adopting employer understands what their pros and cons are,
Sure.
With regards to their decision making.
And as we opened up with, there's a lot of different types of plans out there, and you just talked about one. I strongly recommend everybody reach out to Michael and find out what works best for each organization, and let them give you the best advice and counsel for their situation. So I want to thank you for presenting. I want to thank everybody for watching, and look forward to our other sessions.
Great. Brad, thanks for having me.